With most of the player acquisition portion of the offseason in the books, free agency and draft, let's take a look at my 5 teams who did the best here this offseason. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Friday, May 2 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show, wrapping up the week here. And, looking back at the offseason, it's obviously been a very, very busy one. A lot of player movement, like there is every single offseason. We had free agency back in March. We just had the NFL draft wrap up here last week. At this time last week, it was round 2 about to start. Where is Shedeur going to go? And of course, we all know Shedeur did not go in day 2 either. But now with the draft officially in the books, I want to take a big picture look at some of the teams here this offseason, what they did, going through everything, the coaching staff additions, the free agency, the draft, putting it all together. Like, hey, there's still more players out there. We're still waiting on some trades. So these rosters are nowhere close to final, but the bulk of the player acquisition part of the offseason is in the books. And let's give out my 5 favorite teams here this offseason with what they did. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? It's great to see you here on this Friday.
Yeah, it's great to see you too here, Ari. I got to say, a lot of times when we do these recordings, I already know where you're going with things, your lists, whatever. And it's just like one of those things producers need to know. Today, I have no idea. So I'm very curious where you're going to be going with this. So can you go ahead and knock it out here with number 1? And again, I know you're not ranking. But what's the first team you want to mention?
Yeah, I was going to preface this. This is not 1 to 5. These are just my 5 favorite, no order officially. But let's start with this. And we're going to start with the Washington Commanders for me. And of course, this is now year 2 of the Adam Peters and Dan Quinn regime here in Washington. And just looking at them this offseason, the goal was to take advantage of having something special with Jaden Daniels. You made the NFC Championship game in a magical year last year. You have this cheap rookie contract with Jaden for the next couple of years before it eventually becomes $60+ million per year. And you look at what they did. Did Deebo Samuel have the best year last year? No, but bringing him in to this team on this final year of his contract, a motivated Deebo Samuel, love that move. Laramie Tunsil did not have his best year in Houston last year, bringing in a motivated left tackle who is better than what they had last year to protect Jaden Daniels. Love that move. And you're hoping, of course, to have the other big trade you made last year in Marshawn Lattimore to be healthy. And really bringing back all these players on the roster who were on these one-year deals last year, the veteran leaders like a Bobby Wagner, a Zach Ertz, and then even the other free agent additions throughout the course of the offseason with a Javon Kinlaw in the interior of the defensive line, Jonathan Jones, the longtime cornerback in New England, and the longtime defensive end Dietrich Wise in New England, adding more veteran guys, leader type of people. I love that part of what they did here this offseason. And then even in the draft, they did not have many draft picks because of those 3 trades we just mentioned with Lattimore, Tunsil, and Deebo. The picks they made are all guys who I think could have an impact right away in year 1. Josh Connerly, the offensive lineman out of Oregon, shoring up the offensive line for the present and the future. I think that is a very, very big deal. Adam Peters, the GM, knows how important it is to have an offensive line. That was probably the last good one left there. In round 1, they made sure to take him, and there was this clip that they put out there about how much their offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, wanted Connerly to be added to this offensive line, and Peters did just that. Their round 2 pick in Trey Amos, the Ole Miss cornerback, that was a tremendous value add for me. I mean, that was somebody who some people, including myself, thought could go at the bottom of round 1, a true outside corner who had an SEC best last year, 16 passes defended. So this is somebody who I think could also make an impact in year 1 for Dan Quinn's defense. And then even some of their other picks over here, their 4th round pick, Jalen Lean, he never really had great quarterback play in college at Virginia Tech, but they always tried to get him the ball by doing all these gimmicky plays just to have him have the ball, because once he has the ball, he is super electric. He could also return punts. Now you have him with an actual quarterback in Jaden Daniels. I think he's somebody as well who maybe could get on the field on offense here this year and have some flashy plays for that team. So I just love what they did, realizing the window that they are in. When you have a quarterback on that deal and he's a superstar, he's not getting paid a lot of money. Go out there and add other players who will make that money that should be going to the quarterback, of course. So go pay the Laramie Tunsil contract. Go pay the Debo Samuel contract. Go pay Marshall Lattimore's contract. Go give Javon Kinlaw a lot of money and shore up the defensive line. I like what they did this offseason, attacking the fact that they are in this very, very important window with the rookie quarterback contract.
Yeah, and I was just looking it up here. So according to Over the Cap, they still have $23 million in effective cap room. They have obviously made some big additions to that team, like you mentioned, with the Laramie Tunsil, with the Debo Samuel. You even take a little small flyer on a Michael Gallup. They start building up the offense around what you have there with Jaden Daniels. But they certainly have some money still to play with. Could you see them being a team that makes another one of these additions with maybe one of the free agent wide receivers? Or do you think that they would prefer to ride into the season a little bit, maybe evaluate where they are, take one of those draft picks, and maybe buy a contract for a player that could help really bolster and take advantage of that rookie contract right now that Jaden is under?
I think they like their current receiver room, honestly. I mean, obviously, we mentioned who they drafted there in the fourth round with Noel. We mentioned having Debo. They're going to extend Terry McLaurin, by the way, at some point here in the coming months, give him a well deserved contract extension as he enters the final year of his contract. I think they're fine with where they are at the receiver room, the tight end room, of course, with Ertz, Bates, the blocking tight end, who they re signed this offseason, of course, Ben Sinnott, who they drafted in the second round last year. I think they like everything they have over there. The running back room is one that I'm kind of watching over here. I think Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson, they're good players. I think they could add one more guy there as well. I know they drafted one late in the draft, but overall, this is a team that I think feels like they're in a really good spot right now, entering year two of this regime. And I'll just mention this. I know they don't have as many draft picks as they would love moving forward, but just thinking about those 49ers teams, which is where Adam Peters came from, every single year they would make a trade deadline trade if they felt like they were close. I remember the Christian McCaffrey trade, the Chase Young trade, the Emmanuel Sanders trade. Like every year they would make a trade before the deadline if they were competing in the NFC West. So as long as they're competing in the NFC East now here with Washington, now that Peters, of course, is the GM here, I think they're going to make another trade over here during the season to bolster that roster as long as they're competing. So they have cap space. They have picks. They know where they are in this window. And I love the aggression they're having over here, realizing the spot that they're in. Just go for it right now. And I love that about them.
All right. Who do you have as number 2 on your list?
Yeah, we're going to stick here in the NFC. I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. And I really don't think they planned on bringing back Sam Darnold unless it was on their terms. They are ready for the J.J. McCarthy era to officially start. And I love how they handle the offseason. I mean, we saw how their interior of the offensive line, especially late in the year, was such a problem in that Week 18 game on Sunday Night Football versus Detroit. And, of course, the wild card round loss to the Rams, how much of an issue it was for Sam Darnold. They go out there and they get the top guard in free agency with Will Fries. They go out there and get a dependable, veteran, reliable center in Ryan Kelly, who comes also over from the Indianapolis Colts. And then in the draft, they could have traded out. They had the least amount of picks of any team. And they were like, no, we're not going to trade out. We're going to go out here and get the Ohio State offensive guard / offensive tackle in Donovan Jackson, who could play both positions. And all of a sudden, you look at their offensive line. Christian Darrisaw is going to come back from that knee injury, which he missed a large portion of the year after suffering the injury. You have now left guard Donovan Jackson, Ryan Kelly at center, Will Fries at right guard, and Brian O'Neill there at right tackle. That is one of the better looking offensive lines in the NFL going into the season. And of course, we know the weaponry they have with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and then the running back room, bringing back Aaron Jones and also adding Jordan Mason in that trade with the 49ers. That is a good running back room with a good change of pace style there for Kevin O'Connell, of course, is one of the very best head coaches and offensive coaches in the NFL who will guide J.J. McCarthy here in what will be his first year as the starting quarterback. They get a new backup in Sam Howell as well, who, of course, has some starting experience. It could be a good sounding board there for J.J. McCarthy. So I like what they did on the offensive side. Even the defensive side, addressing the trenches once again. Javon Hargrave, bringing him in. Jonathan Allen, bringing him in as well to that defense. And, bringing back Byron Murphy at cornerback, taking some flyers on an Isaiah Rodgers and Jeff Okudah, who could join this Brian Flores defense as well. And of course, they hit their grand slam last year of the pass rush with Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel. So this just feels like a very well-rounded team over here on both sides of the ball. The NFC North will not be easy, but I love what they did this offseason, realizing the problems they had last year at the end of the season. They won 14 games last year. This was a real team last year. The offensive line was definitely a big issue. J.J. McCarthy played that one preseason game versus the Raiders. He looked quite impressive. They could have brought back Sam Darnold. They tried to bring back Daniel Jones to be in that backup role, but they knew that if they don't get those guys back, they're not going to be so aggressive. They did not offer Sam Darnold more than 1 year guaranteed. They knew that if they leave, we're okay handing the keys over to J.J. McCarthy, and the McCarthy era is underway. And again, from all the young quarterbacks in football, I would say JJ and Caleb Williams, those two NFC North quarterbacks, are in the best position of their surrounding core around them.
I think one of the most impressive things looking at just their roster and going through their R lads for their depth chart really is the true depth that they have and some of the options that they have as backups to be able to help bolster this in the case of injury. Like we talked about the other day, you have Dallas Turner listed as a backup on this defense. And that's only because you have guys like Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman. Like there's so many of these guys at that level. They're taking a shot on a Jeff Okudah. Like there's some dudes here, I think, that definitely have value. I'm adding Ty Felton out of Maryland in the wide receiver room. Do you see that being something that is an advantage for them over a lot of teams in the NFL right now? Is truly that depth that when those inevitable injuries happen, that they're going to be able to keep rolling through the punches, particularly with a team that is now going to be relying on a rookie quarterback that may not necessarily have as much wiggle room when it comes to being able to overcome those situations?
That is the one thing about the NFL that nobody knows what's going to happen with your roster. Injuries can happen at any point. That's for all 32 teams. And having the proper depth obviously will go a long way. I mean, you could look at some teams around the NFL. Look at the 49ers last year as all those injuries piled up. Eventually, it was just too much for them. I mean, the Dolphins, same thing. Injuries eventually last year, it was just too much for them, and eventually you just can't handle it. So having the depth obviously goes a long way, regardless of which team you are. And some teams simply just don't have it, and that's eventually where your season just falls apart. And that's, it's a GM's worst nightmare when you have a really good player at one position, but after that, it just falls off a cliff. So the Vikings at least are positioned well in some of these positions, like the running back room. Aaron Jones has had a history of injuries, like he's had the hamstring stuff. Now at least you have Jordan Mason there, who we saw what he did when Christian McCaffrey got hurt last year. The defensive line, I mean, when they traded up to get Dallas Turner last year, they didn't know that Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel would play the way they did. If they knew they would be that good, all pro levels, I don't think they were going in that direction, trading all the picks they did to move up and get Dallas Turner, who did not have many reps last year because those two guys were never leaving the field. So they do have a lot of guys on this team who are ready to step up whenever the time comes. Again, the offensive line right now was the most crucial part for them going into the offseason, and they handled that really well. And they obviously are hoping that those guys could all stay healthy, because as soon as the Darisaw injury happened last year, that's when everything became a bit of a problem. I know they traded for Cam Robinson. He was really not that great for them. And of course, the interior collapsed as well. So as long as the offensive line in front of JJ does well, I would be really excited about where this team is headed right now going into 2025.
They were a team that was once connected and met with Ryan Tannehill. Do you see that being an option, that they go out there and look a little bit more at the veteran quarterback market? I mean, there's not a whole lot of guys left, but do you see Tannehill in particular being someone they could bring into that room?
They definitely spoke to Ryan Tannehill, who of course did not play last year. And they really exhausted all their options with the veteran quarterback market to see who would be the right fit. Their number one option when the offseason started was bringing back Daniel Jones. And they made a very similar offer to what Daniel accepted in Indianapolis. The 1 year, $14 million deal, they made basically the same offer, but Daniel felt there was a better chance to compete and start in Indianapolis, which he's probably right about. So they pivoted and then they spoke to Ryan Tannehill. The Aaron Rodgers stuff was never really serious. And eventually, as the offseason progressed, Drew Lock, of course, signed in Seattle, which made Sam Howell available, and they traded for him during the draft on Saturday. So he's the backup there, and I don't think Ryan Tannehill will want to be a QB3 in Minnesota. So I don't see that being an option anymore. Ryan will continue to be very, very selective. And again, if he does not find the place that he thinks fits, he's okay with just sitting out the year the way he did last year.
Fair enough. All right. Who do you have next?
All right, number 3, a team we've actually spoken about here during the course of this week is the New England Patriots, and they're my third team over here. This really starts with the coaching hire. I mean, I love Mike Vrabel, love everything about him, what he's about, the culture he wants to build, the way he holds players accountable. He understands the game, the intricacies, time management. He's a player's coach. I mean, just having him, Gerard Mayo is a great guy and somebody who has had a bright future in the NFL. It was just too early for him last year. Mike Vrabel's been there, done that, has gotten the most out of his players in Tennessee, and now he comes over to New England. Love the staff he even put together. Josh McDaniels is a really good offensive coordinator. Say what you want about him as a head coach. He's the good OC, and having him with Drake May will go a very, very long way. Terrell Williams, a new defensive coordinator, gritty guy, comes from Detroit, defensive line guy, was with Mike Vrabel previously in Tennessee. Love that as well. But this was one of the worst rosters in football entering the offseason. And they had the most cap space. And did they overpay for some guys? They probably did. But they also had a lot of these players they signed. They had previous background with them. And I was looking through it. I mean, Harold Landry, they signed. He was with Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. Carlton Davis, they signed. He was with the new defensive coordinator, Terrell Williams, in Detroit last year. Morgan Moses, the right tackle, he was with Todd Downing last year with the Jets. You look at three players they signed who were with Josh McDaniels when he was the Raiders head coach, Robert Spillane, Mac Hollins, Marcus Epps. There's relationships there. Josh Dobbs, who is the new backup quarterback, is a great mentor for Drake May. He was with Mike Vrabel in Tennessee, and if you remember, he started some pivotal games for them when Ryan Tannehill was injured in one of those years where they were trying to make the playoffs. So they added a lot of players who they have some familiarity with, and of course, they took some very big swings with a Milton Williams and a Stephon Diggs, adding some more talent at those positions for this team as well. So from a talent perspective, where they were at the start of the offseason to where they are right now on the veteran standpoint is obviously night and day. I really like the draft that they had as well because the players they added, Will Campbell, left tackle, high football IQ. You heard him when he was drafted. I will literally die to protect Drake May. He is somebody who just fits what Mike Vrabel wants to build. It was a glaring hole for this team. He's going to be their left tackle to start. If it doesn't work out, they'll slide him over to guard, but he wants to be a tackle. They're going to give him that chance. Travion Henderson, the running back out of Ohio State, the best pass protecting running back, really all around running back in this draft. He's somebody leaving next to Drake May, let him protect that extra rusher coming in. He could do it. Of course, he could run the ball as well. And I think this new coaching staff, Ramondre Stevenson was a fumble machine last year. They obviously did not like that. Adding Henderson is obviously a very big deal, and he could be getting snaps early and often this year. Third-round pick Kyle Williams out of Washington. The comp was a bit of a poor man, Stephon Diggs, and of course, Stephon Diggs is now on this team as well. So he's somebody who some guys had higher than where he ended up going, getting him at pick 69, great value. And even the center, Jared Wilson out of Georgia, I thought he would go in the second round. Getting him there at the bottom of round 3, he is someone who could be their future starting center after Garrett Bradbury finishes his contract this year, that one-year deal that he essentially signed. So I loved their draft. Even a guy down there in the bottom of the 5th round, getting the LSU pass rusher, Braylon Swinson. Like, these are some value plays here and guys who could make the roster and have an impact at some point this season. Just from a talent perspective, love where they are. And again, I don't expect playoffs for the Patriots this year, but they're going to be that gritty, annoying team that will be in games in the fourth quarter. Like, they'll be playing a team like the Buffalo Bills in week 7 or week 8 or whatever it is, and they're going to be in it because that's the type of team that they're going to be under Mike Vrabel. So I love what they did from the coaching standpoint, the roster standpoint, the draft as well. They're my number 3 team here.
You referred the other day to Caleb Williams as this being basically a show me year for him. I don't know necessarily if the weapons are as comparable as what we see there in Chicago for Caleb in comparison to what we see with Drake May in New England. But do you think that there is a certain level of that as well for him where it's like, okay, these weapons might not be tier A level, but we did get you a wide receiver in Stephon Diggs, who has a proven track record of being able to put up 1,000-yard seasons, albeit he might be a little bit injured at the beginning of the season, this, that, and the other. Like you mentioned, we got you a pass blocking running back to be able to complement what we already have there. You have these, filler pieces. You've got these tight ends with a little bit more experience on the roster. Do you think that the Patriots are looking at this in the same way that maybe Chicago is with Caleb Williams?
I would say it's different situations here. I mean, for Drake May, you just want to continue to see the progression moving forward and see him develop his game as the future franchise quarterback. I mean, from a roster standpoint, where the Bears are and where the Patriots are, it's just not the same. I mean, the Bears are so much far ahead from a talent perspective, whether it's younger players or veteran players. Like they kind of have everything. The offensive line. I mean, Ben Johnson now being like the Chicago Bears are in a different world, and also just Caleb Williams coming in. He was viewed as this generational prospect, number one pick, slam dunk. Drake May was the number 3 pick, but everyone said he needed time to sit. If you remember, like that was the way people were talking about Drake May last year during the pre-draft process. So with him, I think it's more just like continue to elevate your game up from where you were last year and show us you are the franchise quarterback. And really for the Patriots this year, again, I'm not expecting playoffs with them. I think it's more about setting that culture, and basically next year is that year where you try to take the leap and try to make the postseason. I think this is a team. I don't expect them to be in there with Buffalo in the AFC East, but I think they could compete with the Jets. I think they could compete with the Dolphins there in the AFC East, and basically try to set it up over the year for year 2 of the Mike Vrabel era. It kind of reminds me a little bit of where the Lions were in year 1 of Dan Campbell, where the Commanders, of course, last year in year 1 of Dan Quinn, where obviously Washington went to the NFC Championship game. But my point is, it was more about getting these veteran players the way they did in year 1 and trying to set the culture. I remember Detroit's first year of Dan Campbell. That was Jamal Williams and Michael Brockers, like bringing those type of players to set the culture. Washington last year, it was the Zach Ertzes and the Austin Ecklers and the Bobby Wagners. That's kind of what I got the sense of the Patriots this year, of all the players they added. Try to set the culture. These guys have familiarity with people on the coaching staff. And then next year, assuming Drake May takes that step over here, this next year after that is when they really try to take the big step forward.
A lot of evaluators said Drake May would have been the first overall pick in this past draft there, with Cam Ward being obviously the one that went there at number 1. Your first 3 teams here, they all have sophomore quarterbacks, which the flexibility of a rookie contract definitely helps there in the free agency market. Does your number 4 team also have a sophomore quarterback?
No, we're going to change it up here. We're going to go with the MVP of the league. My number 4 team is the Buffalo Bills, and I know their GM, Brandon Beane, was very feisty this week on the radio because guys were trying to take some shots at him not addressing the receiver room. I liked what the Buffalo Bills did this offseason, and it starts with their own players. I mean, the proactiveness of doing all these contract extensions they did. I mean, they got a lot of team-friendly deals, is the way to look at it. I mean, from last year, where it was the tearing it up of that era, where they moved on from, Jordan Poyer and Mitch Morse and Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis and all these different players, Micah Hyde. That era of Buffalo Bills football was over. It was time for this new era. And we saw all these new younger players who they drafted who really stepped up, and it was time to pay them this offseason. The contracts they got these players on are super, super team friendly. I look at the Christian Benford contract, 4 years, $72 million. Gregory Rousseau, 4 years, $80 million. I mean, the pass rush market is about to be $40 million per year, and they got him here at $20 million per year for an ascending player. Terrell Bernard, 4 years, $50 million. Khalil Shakir, 4 years, $53 million. Like, these are all super value contracts for the team. All those players, of course, have not been getting much money to this point because they're on their rookie deals, but I think they could have gotten more. But it also just says where the culture is in Buffalo, where all these guys wanted to stay and they were okay taking these type of deals where it's nowhere close to the top of the market. So locking in this next core of players in Buffalo on those deals, that is a kudos to Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, what they built. And of course, they also extended the quarterback with Josh Allen at 6 years and $330 million. Every dollar is deserved for one of the best quarterbacks in football. And of course, the MVP of the league. He is locked in for the long haul. And then even free agency, I know there weren't anything like crazy splashy, but adding a Joey Bosa to be the other pass rusher now, your younger version of what you had in Von Miller. Josh Palmer, the receiver, coming over from the Chargers, not a flashy name, but they believe he's an ascending player. They gave him some real money there on the multi-year contract. They did sign a couple of players who ended up getting suspended for the first 6 games of the year. Larry Ogunjobi, Michael Hoyt from the Rams. Those guys will eventually come back, but more help on the defense. Tre'Davious White, Dane Jackson, both coming back in the cornerback room as well for this team. Veteran guys who are going to be more depth pieces here moving forward. And even their draft, we know they were more heavy on defense. And there was, of course, the media in Buffalo saying, oh, you should have drafted a receiver. I mean, Brandon Beane is right. I mean, this team last year offensively, they proved they could do it without Stephon Diggs. I mean, Josh was the MVP of the league. The defense was more of the problem. That's where they kind of ran into some issues at the end. So Maxwell Harrison in round 1, TJ Sanders, defensive tackle, trading up for him in round 2. Landon Jackson, the edge out of Arkansas, I thought he would go higher. He lit up the combine. They get him in round 3. Deontay Walker, defensive tackle out of Kentucky in round 4. And then Jordan Hancock, the cornerback out of Ohio State in round 5. I mean, Brandon Beane has shown he's been able to find some gems over here in those middle rounds as well. All those guys we mentioned who got extensions, Benford, Bernard, Shakir, like those guys were all middle picks here in the draft. So these guys are defensive players who they believe are going to help them in the present and in the future. Defense needed help. If you want to win in the AFC, you have to stop the Joe Burrows, the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jacksons, CJ Strouds, and Drake May, of course, coming up over here in the AFC East as well. You have all these other quarterbacks over here in the AFC. It's a long line of guys. Justin Herbert, you go on and on over here with all the quarterbacks in the AFC. You need a defense. Brandon Beane realizes that. He's fine with where the offense is. He's fine where the offensive line is. He needs to add more people on defense, and I like that. But the overall offseason with the extensions, free agency, and the draft, I like where Buffalo is going and what they did over here, going from last offseason where they moved out from all those players to this offseason, to this next era of Buffalo Bills football. I like what they did.
So would you say that this roster right now is improved compared to what it was last year?
I mean, I would say it's definitely improved. I mean, some of the guys that they moved on from were also, aging players out there. They lost, for example, like a Von Miller out there, who they moved on from this offseason. Some of the players they moved on from are guys who are essentially no longer part of that era of Buffalo Bills football. The only reason Von Miller was even there this past year was because he still had guaranteed money this past year, and they couldn't really move on from the contract. So this is now the next era of Buffalo Bills football. They had that era. They kept on falling short of making the Super Bowl. This is the next era of Buffalo Bills football with all the players who they retained and moving forward over here. So I like where they're at. I like what they've done. And I'm a big fan of the way they handled here this offseason, the contracts they were able to get done.
And then there was one. Who's the final team?
So I kind of debated with my last 3 teams here. I had the Raiders written down because I'm just a big fan of John Spytek and the Pete Carroll and some of the moves they made with the coaching staff. I mean, Chip Kelly, I think, will be a great offensive coordinator. Geno Smith coming in, even the Gentry pick. I really like what the Raiders did. I think they're on the come up over here. I was thinking about the Jaguars as well. I thought they had a sneaky offseason as well. Just moving on from Trent Baalke after they thought about keeping him, I thought was just a win. But the last pick over here for me is going to be the Chicago Bears. I'm going to go with them over here. And it's really just, again, it's the overall structure of what they did here this offseason, starting with the head coach, really going back to when they fired Matt Eberflus after that Thanksgiving game against the Lions, which, of course, we know how it ended with the no timeout call. They never fired a head coach in season ever in history, and they changed the course of over 100 years to finally do that. Then they go out and have this very long-winded head coaching search, and they land on the very best guy in the market in Ben Johnson, and they open up the pocketbooks. I mean, coaches, first-time head coaches, don't get the money that Ben Johnson got. They opened up the pocketbooks to go out there and get him and bring him over from Detroit. And then the way they handled the coaching staff, I mean, Ben Johnson in his press conference, I think at the Combine, he made it clear. I know some coaches love hiring their friends. I was not hiring my friends over here. I was going to hire the best coaches for the staff. Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator. Say what you want about him as a head coach. He is a brilliant defensive coordinator, was really good as a defensive coordinator in New Orleans with Sean Payton when Sean was the head coach. Even Declan Doyle, the offensive coordinator, the youngest offensive coordinator in the NFL right now, I believe, coming over from Denver. I mean, Ben Johnson will call the plays. Declan will be a very, very important part during the course of the week of installs. And basically, because a head coach has a lot more things come through his desk, Ben Johnson won't be able to be locked in his room and have all those plays drawn up. Declan will be able to play a big role in that. So I loved what they did from the coaching staff standpoint. Of course, realizing what they needed to fix from last year. Caleb Williams showed some flashes last year. He was in a bit of a dysfunctional environment with the coaching staff, with Eberflus and Waldron and Thomas Brown becoming interim offensive coordinator to becoming interim head coach. It was a mess. Even the roster, the amount of sacks he took, the interior of the offensive line, it was an issue. They went out there, we're going to prioritize this right here, right now. Drew Dahlman in free agency, the center from Atlanta, trading for Joe Thuney, who is just an outstanding player, an outstanding leader who they will be extending here in the near future. Jonah Jackson, who was with Ben Johnson in Detroit, his 1 year in LA did not go well. They have now fortified the offensive line in front of Caleb Williams, where you go into this year with Braxton Jones at left tackle, Joe Thuney left guard, Drew Dahlman at center, Jonah Jackson right guard, and then Darnell Wright, your former first-round pick, at right tackle. That is a really, really good offensive line group. Even the other players they added in free agency, Dio Digbo from the Colts, an ascending player who they're going to be using inside a little bit more. Grady Jarrett, one of the great players and leaders and off-the-field people that there is in the NFL, surprisingly released by the Falcons. He comes in like 10 hours later, signs a deal with the Chicago Bears. That defense is already in a really, really good spot of all the players they have on that team. Montez Sweat, Tremaine Edmonds, Jalen Johnson, and on and on. It's a really, really good team. They made it even better here with all the players they added. Even the draft, I mean, Colston Loveland, clearly the flavor tight end that Ben Johnson wanted, getting him at number 10. Luther Burden getting him there in the second round. Just hearing Ben Johnson talk about how much of a great player Luther Burden is and what he'll do for that offense. I mean, you could tell he has some ideas for Loveland and Burden here in this offense for this team. So I like what they did. I like the environment they've created for Caleb Williams going into year 2. And they really attacked this offseason to try to put him in the very, very best situation after the mess he was in last year. He's in a much better environment this year. And from the sound of it, they've made it sound like Caleb has been in the building throughout the offseason, working with Ben Johnson, getting ready for a very, very big year. So if this all works out, on paper, it looks great. The Bears definitely have a shot of here to be a top 5 exciting offense to watch throughout the year, and a must watch on Red Zone whenever the time comes.
Man, you didn't rank them. You could have just said, yes, my 4th team in a row does have a sophomore quarterback.
Well, I didn't know which team to put there at number 5. I really debated a lot. Like, I really was thinking about the Raiders. I was thinking about the Jaguars. It was the 3-way tie there, but I gave it to the Chicago Bears because the NFC North is going to be fun, Ben. I mean, it's going to be just the Lions, the Packers. We talked about the Vikings a second ago, and the Bears and what they've done. It's a fun division. Same thing with the AFC West. Like, those two divisions are just stacked, and it's going to be fun to follow both those divisions.
Well, even last year was fun, and you're talking about teams that conceivably, we just talked about a few of them, like it's going to be even better than last year.
And people, like, they had 3 playoff teams and all 3 got bounced in the wild card round, but the Bears started last year 4-2. They should have been 5-2 with the Hail Mary against Washington. So they had a good start to the year. As soon as the Hail Mary happened, I mean, everything fell off a cliff. But going into this year, new coaching staff, all these new players added, this is a very, very fun division. There's a reason why the Lions made a request to change the playoff seeding. I mean, they know where the division is at. Yeah, they get it. They know where the division is. So I don't think it's going to change. The owners' meetings is coming up here later this month, but it's going to be a very, very fun division.
We spoke yesterday about the top remaining free agents. Obviously, there is still quite a bit of cap room out there. Do you envision that there is any team that is still out there right now that could be a little bit more aggressive than the others with maybe rounding out their roster before training camps get set?
I don't really get a sense that there's any bidding wars out there for any of these free agents out there. A lot of these free agents, some of them are going to sign up here because they've had interest for a while. But I think some of them are going to wait for mini camp and training camp to start because the inevitable is going to happen. There's going to be an injury somewhere. And once that happens, the market only goes up for those players. So some of these guys are waiting. Some of these teams are like, we like what we have. And eventually these guys get on the field like, oh my God, this guy's not as good as we thought. And now you go out there and sign somebody. So that's going to happen over here in the coming months once all these players get on the field. One of my favorite things that happens every year is once these rookies get on the field, which is going to happen here in a couple of weeks of rookie minicamp, some of these teams know right away these players are going to be great. And some of the guys they draft are like, oh my God, it's not as good as we thought. So you're going to see some of these free agents also come off the board just based on that.
Love it. All right, guys, it is Friday. Have a great weekend. Make sure that you guys are subscribed. Ari, unless there's anything else you want to talk about, we're good to get out of here.
Yep, that will do it here for our Friday, May 2 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. We will be back here tomorrow morning. We'll be back here on Monday morning to start the week, of course. And enjoy your weekend, and we will see you all here on Monday. Yes,
which will be our 201st episode.
Today was our 200th episode. I forgot. That's right. What a milestone. 200. How's it 200 already? It's crazy. Yeah. But it is unbelievable. Thanks for all the support. Subscribe, rate, review, all the good stuff. And we will see you all here on Monday morning.